Today I'm breaking down my super minimal travel sketching kit. I'll show you what art supplies I carry with me everywhere I go, my process for sketching on the fly, and I'll also share some tips and tricks for how to sketch quickly and to enjoy the creative process when you're traveling. Hi, I'm Bingying, a traveling watercolor artist based in Tokyo. For the past 6 years, I've been documenting all of my travels and my life in these sketchbooks, as you saw in my previous sketchbook tour video. Travel sketching is my absolute favorite way to explore the world. When I sit down at a beautiful location and paint it, I stop being a tourist just passing through. I start noticing all the little details that go into an ornate old building, and I learn about the history behind a mythical statue at a local temple. And the best part is getting to know the people. I've met so many locals who see me drawing and stop to say hi. I've made wonderful friends from all over the world this way, and it gave me a more authentic perspective of these cities that I never would have discovered otherwise as a tourist. This little kit is what made all of these unforgettable experiences possible, so let's dive right in. This video is not sponsored by anyone, but I put links to every single item I use in the description. If you use those links, it helps support my tiny little channel, so thank you! My pen case and sketchbook really are a carry with me, super small and simple. It's important to keep your gear minimal so you're not lugging around heavy art supplies when you're traveling. This pen case is the Sonic Smasta that I got in Japan. It folds out and snaps together magnetically, so it can act as a pen stand. Super handy when you're sketching on the go and need to grab stuff quickly. I'm going to go through these supplies in the order that I use them when I'm sketching, starting with my pencil. I usually do a very light layer of undersketching first with a color pencil. This is the Uni Emote mechanical pencil in orange. Mechanical is great since I don't have to sharpen it, and this orange color is light enough that I never erase the pencil marks afterwards. That saves time so I can sketch faster. I do have an eraser in here just in case, but most of the time I don't end up using it. I also just really like the effect of leaving in my undersketching. I feel like the orange adds a nice warm glow to my painting, which works really well for the soft, airy style that I like. And it doesn't have to be orange. I've tried green pencil here and pink pencil here. They all look pretty nice. Even when I sell my art prints and art books, I never edit out the pencil marks in Photoshop or anything. You can see the pencil here and here. I think it just adds a little bit more personality and a loose, carefree vibe to my art. And lately, I try to make my process faster by relying less on the pencil, so I tend to make a very quick undersketch to just get the layout roughly there, and then go in with ink. Next up is the fountain pen. For most of my sketches, I use the ink and wash style, where I do an outline with ink first and then add watercolor. For me, this is a faster style to sketch in since the dark ink outline adds some nice contrast without having to go in with many layers of watercolor, which is a much slower process. Sometimes for a more nature-oriented sketch like this one, I skip the ink and go directly to watercolor because it gives a softer, more natural feel, but most of the time when I'm sketching buildings and cityscapes, I prefer to start with LINEWORK. My current pen of choice is the Kaweco Sport fountain pen because it's really small and portable, and in general I just really like Kaweco's retro aesthetic. Specifically, I use the piston filler version of the Kaweco Sport, which is a fairly recent release, compared to the original Kaweco Sport where you had to use a converter to store ink. With the piston filler version, the entire body is the reservoir, so it holds a lot more ink. I have had this special olive green version of the original Kaweco Sport for a while, and I do love this gorgeous color, so I'm very sad to stop using it. Now, if you want to use ink with watercolor, you have to use waterproof ink. Otherwise, the ink is going to bleed when you add watercolor to it. The ink I use is a custom mix of Diatramentus Document Brown and Rohrer & Klickner Sketch Ink in Orange, both of which are waterproof inks. I mix these two to get this very subtle shade of golden sepia brown that is kind of my signature color. I do have a black, but I don't like to use black ink for my line work because I feel it's a little too heavy for my style, which is more light and airy. But if black is your thing, then by all means go for it. If you want to know how I mix my own ink, let me know in the comments below and I can do a tutorial for that. I also carry a fine liner pen as a backup just in case my fountain pen runs out of ink. This is the Deleter liner in sepia. Another popular choice is the Sakura Pigment Microns, a classic. It's hard to find a good dark brown colored fine liner, but these two are pretty good choices. If you're just getting started with sketching, the fine liners are a great choice since they are cheaper and lower maintenance than the fountain pens. Sometimes I would use colored pencil for the line work when I want the effect to be softer. This is a dark brown that is quite versatile. It's the Faber-Castell Polychromos. Other colors I like to use are orange, purple, and green. I feel like these add a very soft, dreamy effect to my sketches. And I like to use these colors when I want the painting to feel lighter and softer, especially when I'm painting nature, flowers, or food. Next step is coloring. I use this mini watercolor palette and water brushes for this. Let me talk about the palette first. This is a little wooden palette that I've used for about 6 years now. It's magnetic, which is quite handy, and I just clip it into my sketchbook to paint. This is a brass clip from Traveler's Company. It's aged very well with me over the years. I use the 15 color version of this palette, but there are smaller ones with like 8 or even 3 colors if you want to be super minimal. I personally like the Winsor & Newton Professional watercolors because they're vibrant and very high in transparency, which works well for my style. I'll put my color choices on the screen here. There are probably about 9 colors I use all the time, plus a few extras that I use more occasionally. You just need to squeeze the paint in and let it air dry, and it's ready for use. Most of the time I use water brushes for coloring. You fill these up with water and squeeze to get the water out, so you don't need to carry any water cups, and that makes sketching outdoors really fast and easy. If you want to change colors, just keep squeezing water out and it'll clean itself. This is a little piece of paper towel that I carry in my pen case, just like this. Granted, the quality of these water brushes are nowhere near as good as proper watercolor brushes. They feel a lot more stiff and plasticky, for lack of a better word, and they've definitely got a learning curve when you first get started. But the massive gain in convenience makes up for it. I've tried pretty much all the brands of water brushes you can find, and Staedtler is my personal favorite. It's small and portable, the quality is pretty decent for what it is, and I like that the different sizes are very prominently color-coded. I use the large size for the majority of my paintings and the small size for occasional details. Sometimes if I know I'm going to be sketching in a cafe or somewhere where I have easy access to water and preferably a table, I'll bring my travel brushes. These are silver black velvet brushes and they fold out like this. These bristles are going to be much higher quality than the water brushes. I'll also bring a little palette cup that I'll use as a water cup. You can also clip it into your sketchbook like this, and it'll work fine when you're painting outdoors. You just have to be careful since it's very easy to spill the water. In my pen case, I carry a little spray bottle as well. I usually spray my page with a light mist before I start on the watercolors since it keeps the paper moist and I can work with blending watercolors more easily, especially because paper tends to dry a little bit faster when you're sketching outdoors. If my water brush runs out of water, I'll also use the water from the spray bottle to fill up my brush, so it doubles as a water reserve for me, which is nice. Also tucked in my pen case is a view catcher, which is a window that helps with picking a composition. It's handy when you're doing plein air and you're in a beautiful setting, but it's hard to know how to best frame your painting. But in addition to its main purpose, when I want to paint a full spread, I can also clip it into my sketchbook and use it as an extension board for my palette, so the palette sits outside of my sketchbook entirely. Next up is the white highlighter pen. I use this to add highlights or white details on a darker background. Of course, you can use masking fluid or white ink, but I just find white pens to be much easier and faster for outdoor sketching. This is the Uniball Signal Broad Gel Pen, and it's honestly the only white pen I've found that is actually opaque enough. Most white pens are like semi-transparent, so it kind of sucks. The last thing in my pen case are some clips that I use to hold my sketchbook in place. I really like this tiny one because it doesn't stand out in my photos, but I keep losing them because they're so small. And speaking of sketchbooks, I'm using a couple different sketchbooks right now. This is the main one for all of my travel sketches. It's just a tad bit smaller than A5, but you can paint a pretty big spread. This is a hand-bound sketchbook from the Etsy store Natsume Handmade. They have many different cute fabric covers to choose from, and you can also pick the paper. I use arches because paper is probably the single most important component for watercolor painting, and arches is widely regarded as the best paper. This smaller one is for my casual daily sketches, and it's a Pentalic aqua journal. My travel sketchbook is for my more proper artwork, where I'll put in a lot more effort to make everything nice and presentable, whereas the casual sketchbook is the no stress, sketch whatever I want, whenever I want kind of deal. And I never do pencil under sketching in this one because the whole purpose is to be really fast and loose. I think it's really important to separate these two things because if you're always aiming for high quality artwork, you get really stressed out about potentially ruining a good sketchbook and you end up not drawing as much as you want. With the casual sketchbook, you're free to experiment and to be messy, to record your life in a more carefree way. And honestly, some of my favorite sketches are in this book because it's so raw and loose. Like these ones where I sketched at a jazz bar in Tokyo. It was so dark during the performance that I couldn't really see what I was doing, but it ended up being super loose, and I could still feel that jazzy vibe in these pages. Another personal favorite for sketchbook is the Traveler's Notebook. These come in the regular size and the smaller passport size. For my first couple years doing travel sketches, I did them exclusively in the passport size of the Traveler's Notebook because it's just so tiny and easy to carry around. Right now in the regular size Traveler's Notebook, I'm doing the series where I introduce my favorite hidden gems from different neighborhoods in Tokyo. I think this size works really well for this kind of magazine layout. I'm hoping to publish this as a zine in a month or two, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, I already have 3 other illustration zines that you can get on Etsy. Check out the link in the description. Oh, and the very last thing in my travel bag is a folding stool, which pops out like this, and it's very compact and lightweight. I've done a lot of sketches while standing, and it's fine, but it's more stable if I'm sitting down. In most cities, it's not hard to find a corner or something to sit, but if I know I'm going somewhere rugged or messy, I'll bring the folding stool. Now, one question I get a lot is, how do I make time for sketching when I'm traveling, especially if I'm with a group? The simple answer is I just try to sketch really fast. It usually takes me about an hour to an hour and a half to do one page in this travel sketchbook, so it doesn't take up that much of my travel time. If I'm traveling with a group, I would either wake up a little earlier to do my sketching or ask people to go somewhere else and we'll meet up later. I also try to utilize little pockets of spare time, like quickly squeezing in a sketch when I'm waiting for the bus or when I'm waiting for food. And how do I sketch as quickly as possible? In this video, I've already shared a few tricks, like using colored pencil without erasing them, and using water brushes instead of traditional brushes to save time. But learning to let go and be comfortable with sketching loosely is also really important. I've done exercises where I set a 20-minute timer and force myself to finish a sketch within that time, and that really helped to loosen up. Also, it's really okay if the perspective is not perfect or if all the details are not there. If you wanted a perfect painting, you might as well take a photo. If anything, the loose style adds more character to your sketches and they feel more like you. By being imprecise and imperfect, you're expressing more of exactly how you feel in that moment as you're surrounded by that beautiful scene. And it makes for much more vivid memories later when you look back through your sketchbooks. So that was everything in my travel sketching kit and why I love this hobby. If you want to see more sketches that I did with this kit, check out this video where I flipped through a whole year's worth of travel sketches and show you the behind the scenes for how I painted them. In the next video, I'll be sharing how I sketched in the snow in a beautiful rural village in Japan. So see you next time!